With me today is the Lagos State Labour Party Governorship candidate, architect Gbadebo Rhodes-Vivour. How is the election going?
Well, our strategy has always been one of a surge strategy, and the vibrancy has gone according to plan, and I'm very grateful to God and the good people of Lagos for that.
Yes. Recently we've had issues of naira redesign and naira scarcity. What are your views on why?
I think the policy in itself is a good one because we're trying to take money out of our politics. At the same time, the implementation of it has been very poor. And I think they did not account for the amount of greed, the amount of bottlenecks that currency will have to go through. You have a lot of people, the masses, are looking for money. There's no money in any ATM. But we are seeing people spraying new money at weddings. We're seeing politicians giving out new money, and they're giving their people and people that are coming for rallies new currency. So the question is, has the purpose of this policy been defeated? And what is the president going to do about this? What's the CBN going to do about it? Because the policy in itself is an extremely valuable one. It will truly change the face and the narrative of our politics in Nigeria.
Yes. How do you think this is going to affect the elections?
Well, I believe that people will be able to vote for their conscience, right? People will not have the option of being induced.
Yes. So do you think the deadline should stand, or?
I believe the deadline should stand, and I believe the EFCC and other financial regulatory agencies, the DSS, should go after these banks that monies have been released to ensure that these monies are being released to the people.
Oh, yes. My next question, if elected governor, what are the first things you think you can achieve in your first 100 days?
In my first 100 days, we're going to tackle all the low-hanging fruits in relation to traffic. We're going to ensure that we do guidelines and set benchmarks for the quality of roads. We set benchmarks for the life expectancy of roads, and ensure that funding gets to the local government so the inner roads, which make up 30% of our road network in Lagos, actually start to be done. We're also going to open the BRT lanes to the private and public sector and create platforms. Our government is one of platforms, which if you have a bus that can carry over 50 people and it meets our requirements in terms of quality of the bus, quality of the engine, you can use a BRT lane because we are extremely underserved as people, and it doesn't make sense that there's a monopoly on that. We'll also be looking to start to ensure that we start immediately to start the project on our train system in Lagos State. We need to deliver a statewide train network of about 120 kilometers in 4 years, and we're going to lay the groundwork to make that happen in the first 100 days. Also, we're going to start stakeholder engagement with the many unemployed youth in Lagos State that are part and parcel of the insecurity problems that we have to deal with in Lagos State. We're going to engage them at the local government level in employment skill acquisition programs and start financing that immediately. And everybody because every time I interact with them, the conversation is always about, we don't have jobs, we want jobs. Some are even graduates. But because of the vulnerabilities that this Lagos State and the failed government has exposed them to, you have a situation where the worst of the worst in them is coming out as opposed to the best in them. So we're going to work to correct that.
I'm sorry.
And then lastly, we're going to start the process of, because it said first 100 days, so the first thing that comes to my mind, we're going to start the surveillance of the measurement of our seabed, right?
Okay.
Because we need to gather data on different levels of it to inform our dredging, whether it's people excavating for sand and whether it's a state dredging, so that our waterways can actually be a real means of moving people around. And with industrial sized ferries, not these speedboats that people are going in and they're so worried and insecure that it will capsize. We need to normalize movement by water, and that's something that we're going to be focusing on the first 100 days.
Yes, thank you so much for that, because we've had quite a number of boats capsizing and there is no help. The waterways are a little not safe. Lagos State has been ruled by APC since 1999. Yes. Is there any policy that you want to improve on? Maybe they started, but you'd like to improve on?
I mean, the train system, we're going to probe to understand why did it take so long. They got 1.2 billion to do, I think, between 24 to 26 kilometer rail line.
Yes.
Right? half of that, even less than half, was used to do even a 175-kilometer rail line that in Ethiopia took 3 years. Right? So we need to understand what are the real reasons behind this. Why has it taken so long to deliver only 13 kilometers? Right? But we're going to ensure that a statewide rail network is implemented. So that is in their plans, right? So we're going to ensure that that becomes a reality in Lagos State and several other things. But the main thing that we'll be looking to do as well in the first 100 days is open the state accounts of Lagos State. Completely, line by line items, and we're going to illustrate it. You know how you use infographics to sell an idea and sell message? That's what we're going to do. We're going to make it extremely interactive so people will enjoy looking at it. We're not going to wait for you to use an FOI request to get information, even though the FOI request does not really include financial details of the state. But those are some of the things we're going to do, because that allows transparency and openness take on a life of its own.
Yes.
And then based on that, we can benchmark our projects to World Bank benchmarks, such as a kilometer of road based on World Bank benchmarks should cost this, kilometer of rail should cost that.
Yes.
You know, so it'll make things a lot more transparent, and then we can start to get value for our money. Most of the projects that are being done in Lagos are being done times 4 the price, times 10 the price in certain situations even. So once we can stretch our resources to maximize on it, we'll then create an enabling environment for the private sector to also start to get involved in doing development. Because I feel that development of Lagos State must not be tied to the purse strings of the state.
So in short, government for the people. Government
for the people, government that creates platforms for people to get involved in.
Yes, thank you so much. The INEC has said it will work closely with the NURTW in this coming election to move both sensitive and non-sensitive election materials. What do you think about this?
This is the dilemma. NURTW has an MOU with INEC to distribute materials, which has always been done, and which was done in Lagos State under the leadership of MC Olomo, which also led to a lot of irregularities in our election processes. So now they are trying to get the contract to do that again, and that's completely unacceptable. The fact that the INEC state chairman is even considering it is making a lot of us doubt his capacity and credibility to conduct free and fair elections in Lagos State.
Yes.
So we're going to ensure that we work against that, and we're going to petition that and come out to the public and say the fact that one of the biggest supporters of APC, one of the biggest supporters of Tinubu, the first person to do a rally in favor of Tinubu is MC Olomo. How will we give him the contract to distribute sensitive materials? It's completely despicable.
So you think that's very biased?
Extremely biased. It's something that cannot fly. The moment that we accept that, then we might as well have kissed the election 40% goodbye.
Yes, in a previous interview, you said you plan to ban agberos in Lagos. Can you?
Let me expand on that, and that ties into what I said earlier.
Yes.
If you recall, I talked about youth unemployment.
Yes.
You see, when we label people, we dehumanize them. And that statement was just a clip taken out after I'd explained all the things I was going to do. Right? So first of all, like I said, we'll engage them as stakeholders at the local government level.
Yes.
Involve them in skill acquisition workshops where they can come, they can eat, and they can get skills. Now, products of that program will incentivize companies that are doing a lot of work at the local government level to hire these people. So for instance, there are many roads that need to be done, there are many gutters that need to be cast, many vocational jobs that need to be done, tiling, POP. Companies that are going to earn preferred status with the state government will be people that hire these young men that are products of these trainings, right? Now, once we have done that, because like I said, when I engage with most of these young men, their request is for jobs. It always starts alaye, and then once you just ask them, if I brought jobs, you get off the street, you see that mask comes completely off, and you realize that whole thing, that whole voice, everything is just an adaptation.
Yes.
The last time this happened to me, one of the gentlemen there was a graduate of UNILAG. The other one standing next to him was a graduate of Nsukka. But Lagos happened to them, Nigeria happened to them, it could happen to anybody. So we're also going to treat the drug problem as a health issue, not a criminal issue, right? And ensure that rehabilitation happens at local government level. Now, when people decide that they don't want to be part of this productive society that we're trying to build, they want to continue harassing the good people of Lagos State, then they will feel the full wrath of the law. But we're going to start first by creating an alternative means for them to earn a living.
Oh, yes. Politics in Nigeria over time, there's been a lot of association with party loyalists. You yourself were a member of PDP in 2019. How did you deflect? How did you get to the Labour Party?
It even started a COA party.
Oh.
When I entered politics, I ran for local government chairman of Ikeja under the COA party.
Okay.
After which I joined the PDP. I was central candidate for the PDP. After which I stayed in the party, mobilized so many young people into the party, demystified the idea of politics so that more young people to get involved. And I went through a process, agreements were made, and the agreements were reneged on. And I'm not the person that you renege on an agreement with and expect I'll sit there in the shadows in the corner. That's not me. So, but the bigger idea, even with all these movements, is that it has been consistently anti the ruling party. Because I believe that the ruling party has put Lagos in a state of mediocrity. You understand? As far back as 1966, Lagos State was ranked as one of the best cities in the world. In the last decade, it's been ranked as the bottom 2 worst places to live in the world. These numbers don't lie, right? There was a time where all these giants that they are calling themselves, these political gladiators, they lived in a Lagos where they could open the tap and drink water from it. Is that the Lagos that they've given us today? They could go to any general hospital and get quality treatment. Today they fly to get injection abroad, right? Is that the Lagos that they're talking about that they built, you know? So, I mean, Lagos State is a place where I get my pedigree from. My great-grandfather lived there. I know the histories that they passed down to us. So for us, we want to restore Lagos to excellence.
Yes. There is this narrative going around saying Tinubu built Lagos, and you must have heard that. What do you think about that statement?
I mean, it's completely nonsense. It's nonsense. Like I just said, 1966, Lagos was ranked as one of the best cities in the world, along with Melbourne, Cairo, Paris, London, right? Darocha was pumping water from Iju Waterworks to Lagos Island back then, 1910. Right? Lagos State was both the economic, political, and financial capital of Nigeria. Yes. The infrastructure that Tinubu inherited was even built by the military. Third Mainland Bridge, Qatar Bridge, Echo Bridge. Which bridge? Every 4 years you hear about Fourth Mainland Bridge. After elections, you won't hear about it again. They've taken how many years to do a train? Something that Lateef Jakonde had the vision to do. Right? He had the vision to do it, unfortunately it was cut short, but I assure you that if he started, he would have finished.
This same Lagos Rail mass transit?
No, just a mass transit system.
Oh, okay.
He had started, he had signed a contract. It's General Buhari at the time that came and prevented that from happening. But the idea that I'm trying to pass is that Lagos has been so much more. It's not by accident that Lagos State was called the center of excellence. I cannot emphasize this enough. They did not say it was beside excellence. They did not say it's a place where excellence is. They said it is the very center.
Yes.
And when you're in Lagos, everything around you is excellent. That's not the case.
Yes, one of the most significant problems, especially on the island in Lagos, is flooding. And you're an architect, and there are these structures and buildings have been over time. Houses have been built on intersections and everything. Do you think this problem is fixable?
Of course it is. Lagos State claims that they have a wetland protection policy. They've not implemented it.
Can you expatiate on that?
The wetland protection policy is one. You see, Lagos State is a coastal state, so you have a lot of marshes and swamps.
Yes.
These are the state's natural reservoirs for water. Unfortunately, the agency that they've put in charge of theoretically protecting these wetlands are the ones that give them out to be developed. Now, the problem is when you sand fill all of these places, that water must go somewhere. You are also preventing the water from moving out of the city. If you look on the left side, when you're going from Ikeja to the island, you see that they're already starting sandfill around Makoko. Then next year, you will find that Lagos mainland will start flooding. They will say climate change. But on what basis are you doing that sandfilling? Right? And these are the problems. These are some of the causes of flooding. You have people building on wetlands. We don't have any proper wetland protection plan that's sacrosanct to development. Our gutters are not being maintained properly. You know, you have a very poor waste management system, which is really waste picking, waste dumping, not really waste management. And you just have buildings being built over canals. There is no proper respect for the water. And another thing, our waterways are not being dredged properly. You'll find that budgets have been allocated for dredging of waterways, but you see that in reality it did not happen. And you find a lot of development is being done for the rich. They displace water, and then that water goes to flood the poor areas. Because in displacing the water, they don't build proper embankments to prevent that water from getting in there. So you see Ilubirin, Lagos Island. You see Eco Atlantic, you see Kodo. Right? And I could go on and on. Same thing with Magodo Sherry. You find channels, you see Magodo area. Right?
Yes.
So our waterways need to be dredged properly. Our wetland protection plan needs to be sacrosanct development. And where people have built on it or built over canals or built over waterways, we must go back to those developers and say, listen, you must pay for water to properly get out of here. If not, you'll lose your building. It's just that simple.
Speaking of Makoko is known to be a settlement, and at some point I think the government asked them to leave. So do you think the entire Makoko should be scrapped? Because, you know, at some point we have NGOs out of Nigeria coming to Makoko, donating money to these places. What do you think about this ranside? Because it's
Makoko, the Makoko settlement is as old as Lagos.
Yes.
The name Makoko was pretty much named around the same time that Lagos got its name. These are indigenous people, highly indigenous people. You know, a lot of them trace their history back to Badagry, Egun people. They have a lot of villages as well that migrated there. You cannot just be uprooting people because you believe in an idea of development that is Eco-Atlantic Dubai. How many Nigerians can afford to live in Dubai? We must create inclusive development. So I do not believe that Makoko should be demolished. So I believe that we can take it, and this is my credit and my value as an architect that I bring to the table. We look at it and create a transformative design. This place can truly be an art district. It can be a place that attracts tourists, an art district and a fish market, and connect it with a beautiful design that does not completely chase people out. You can take that part, build upwards, right? And then so you give people respect of place. And then also do another development, an art center that is on stilts. This is something that will be beautiful to make a lot of news. I mean, if you remember, there was a time where there was the floating school in front of Makoko, that triangular building. It was all over the world. It was in all the press, all the architecture magazines. They might not still have their issues with it. But the idea is when you do something creative, new, it attracts tourists, right? And when we combine art, combine a very culturally sensitive architecture, and also combine history with it, these are the makings of creating a magnet for tourism.
Yes, as an architect, we've had a number of building collapses in Lagos. We really cannot say why. There's a major one, 21-story building that went down on the island. And the causes, we can't, what do you think the causes are? Because we're recording lives that they need to.
Of course. The causes come from a building regulatory agency that's just not doing its job.
Yes.
And because there's so much corruption in this process, because there's so much greasing of palms, they don't even have the moral right to make certain demands. You see that they're just there to do the surface work and get money, right? And then we pay for that with the blood of innocent civilians, innocent citizens that just did not have to be shed. So as part of my government first 100 days, we're going to call an emergency on buildings that have been built in last 10, 15 years and just check the status of it, right? Because there are many factors that lead to building collapses, the water levels affecting the foundation, affecting the walls.
Yes.
And also the quality of materials that are being used, the shortcuts that developers take, so they can maximize on the money that they make. Buildings that got approval for 10 floors, but they are insisting they want to go to 15 floors against the structural engineers' advice.
Yes.
So these are things that we must look at, and we must use innovation and technology to reduce the number of human beings that are involved in that process because they can be compromised. I'll give an example. You can use GIS, which is using satellites to be able to map out. I mean, we use GIS all the time, Google Maps and all that. But you can use it to map how high a building is.
Okay.
And you can code AI to be able to say this building is actually 13 floors, but you got approval for 12 floors. And automatically a letter can be issued directly to the person without any human interaction.
Wow.
Right? So this is how we need to go to. You see, you cannot fight an existing system. You simply create a system that makes its own obsolete. Right? And that's the premise on which my government will be built.
Yes, speaking on transportation, Lagos State Office of Disability Affairs, LASODA, how effective do you think the transportation system for disabled people are? Because we've had problems where these people complain about entering banks, what problems where do you think the Lagos systems, even the new systems that are being created, do you think it allows disabled people move freely in this city?
There's so much work that needs to be done in terms of livability for differently abled people.
Yes.
And that's something that we're definitely going to look into and ensure we have enough representatives in policy on the table when we're making policy in terms of design, transport, housing. They need to be there. Their voice needs to be there.
Yes.
So that these things can be considered. I've seen the new bus stops that they've built, and to be fair to them, I did see ramps. Now, do those ramps meet the criteria for wheelchair access? That's a different question.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times they do things just because of tokenism, but I cannot say authoritatively because I'm not going to take the measurement of those ramps. But I've seen some sort of effort, so I have to acknowledge that.
Yes, okay. How confident are you in this coming election?
I'm next governor of Lagos State.
Oh, we like that. But then, if this election does not go your way, would you concede defeat or would you try again?
You see, my journey in politics has been a long one, relatively. I mean, I'm relatively young, I'm 39 years old.
Okay.
I was senatorial candidate at 35. And so I was beneficiary of not too young to run. The whole idea of politics is that it's the only way to get into government, except you want to go to the barrel of a gun, which I don't have any business or interest in doing. Now, I do not have the capacity to see my state, the only state that my ancestors bequeathed, being run like this. I don't have that patience and I don't have that capacity to just experience it. So it's either I participate in politics and at least be able to tell my children, I gave my best and I tried, I made all the sacrifices, I gave my all. Or I japa. Yeah, because I cannot see. Plato said something, and a lot of people don't fully understand that idea. Plato said, and I paraphrase, he said, the price of refusing to participate in politics is that you'll be ruled by people inferior to you. Now, it isn't an insult. It just means that there are people that are happy with governance as it is today. They don't think that the people ruling them are inferior to them. But if you are complaining about how you are being ruled and you're not participating in politics, then you are being ruled by people that you feel can do a better job than. So you must participate, right? And I feel that that's what drives me. Because I believe that Lagos can be so much more. Lagos State can be #1 commercial capital in Africa. Lagos State can have #1 in terms of ease of doing business. It can have #1 in Nigeria. Currently, it's number 17, between 15 and 17. Actually, lower than Kaduna. That's even Boko Haram problems. That's a situation where Lagos State, it wants home. It wants melting pot. That invited everybody. The indigenous of Lagos are welcoming people. That's why Lagos State flourished the way it did. That culture has been changed. People are threatening people about drowning them in the water. They are threatening people about closing their markets. You have a mafia-type style government, a state capture that only exists to aggregate resources for one man, his family, and his cronies. It's very, 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 very. I mean, people are waking up at 4 to get to work for 8. This is madness, you know. Unfortunately, like Fela said, my people will be suffering and smiling, you know. But I'm glad that there's a generation that has woken up to their responsibility, and that's the obedient movement. And they've decided that, you know, they're going to hold government accountable. They want a Lagos State that works for them, and a government that's accountable and is excellent.
Oh yes. Any advice for the youth in this coming election?
Please I know some people were frustrated and never got their voters cards.
Yes.
I need you, if you never got your voters card, find 10 people, find 10 friends, uncles, aunties, people that work with you. Ensure that they go out to vote. Normally, these guys stay at home on the day of election. They just watch TV, they go play football. Work on them, sit on their necks that they must come out and vote. So for that one PVC that you were denied, you're going to retaliate with 10. And for those that got their PVC, same thing to you. The idea is you must win this election with a landslide that is not controversial, that they cannot rig. We need to give a solid margin and show that Lagos State is both the home of the obedient movement and the home of, young people that have stood up to their responsibility of holding the government accountable and demanding a better quality of government in Nigeria.
Mr. Gbadebo, thank you so much for your time. We hopefully would come back to this conversation when you're governor.
Amen.
Thank you so much for your time.
Alausa.
Oh, I like that.